Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Now, I don't know if it's authentic, if it's actually happening, if it's going to materialize in the same way that, it's being suggested in the polling data, but what the polling data, or the current trends, are suggesting is the total and utter collapse of the modern Democrat Party. Now, of course, that could be clipped and then the election hits, and it turns out that I may be wrong. Of course, I get it. I mean, that's the danger of making statements like that. But even if it doesn't play out in the way that the polling data is suggesting, what the polling data is suggesting is a mass exodus of the Democrat Party. I want to start off with a segment from Bill Maher's show. And yeah, if you're paying attention to the uploads today, I recorded 2 videos covering Bill Maher's show last night. What can I say? It was just that good. And I'm not referring to Bill Maher being that good, but rather his guest. I want to start off with a couple things that were said and then use that to transition into some polling data. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks. So let's start off with these 2 moments right over here.
You're not going to like this, Bill, but I think there's 2 ways to look at 91 indictments, okay? You can either look at 91 indictments and say, wow, 91 indictments. Surely this person has done one of these things, right? You can also look at 91 indictments and say, wow, 91 indictments. They're really out to get him, and they are not going to stop until something sticks.
Or could it be a little of both?
It could be a little of both, but what I think is happening is that with every additional indictment, people moved from the first group into the second group, and each additional indictment had less and less purchase with the American people.
Should Democrats be worried about the 100,000 uncommitted votes in the Michigan primary? Oh, yes, I read about this. Will protest votes over Biden's policy in Gaza cost him the election in the fall? If people don't know what we're talking about, Michigan just had a primary. Michigan has a large Muslim population. They're not too thrilled that Joe Biden is supporting Israel in its war. And so 100,000 people voted uncommitted. These are Democratic voters who apparently seem to be saying we are threatening to support Trump, a known lover of Muslims. But this is a wedge issue in the Democratic Party. The young people, the kids, and Muslim voters like this don't want him supporting Israel. Many other people do. What are your thoughts?
I think that the media really, really wants to put this narrative out there that Biden is going to lose Michigan over Gaza, when the truth is he's going to lose Michigan over 600,000 auto workers, because his EV market was extremely punishing to auto workers. And like we said earlier, there's been this big realignment where working class Americans are very, very, very much on the Trump train, people who used to be Democrats and used to vote for Democrats. And rather than admit that, this outrage that Democrats lost the working class vote and try to figure out how we can appeal to them again, they're looking for excuses and other things to blame, like, oh, this war in Gaza, or they'll call them deplorables, or they'll call them racists, because they don't want to admit that Trump has picked up a lot of the policies that used to be Democratic policies in the 90s, like controlling the border, for example. The idea that an open border and mass migration is extremely punishing to the working class. It drives down their wages. It's class warfare against the working class. It is an upward transfer of wealth from the working class, who end up competing with immigrants, to the elites who end up employing them, and now they can employ cheap immigrants instead of having to pay working class Americans a living wage. Thanks, guys.
I think our assessment is correct, and I think the Democrats have their heads buried in the sand so deeply that they're oblivious to the facts. They're oblivious to what's happening above ground. Regular people are fed up. The university grads and the social studies professors and the fancy elitist people who view every general election as the time to virtue signal as morally superior beings. We vote for the Democrats because we care about the poor people. Outside of those people, outside of the vote blue no matter who crowd, we are seeing so much movement. And like I've been saying, a lot of it doesn't even have anything to do with Trump. A lot of it is Democrats shooting themselves in the foot. I think what was said about the 91 indictments was quite accurate. It's a slow sort of process. It happened to me back in 2016, where I slowly started to see the BS, and Donald Trump over time became more favorable, and now it's happening again. 91 freaking indictments, more indictments than Al Capone. Actually, Trump referenced this at his rally the other day.
I've been indicted more than Al Capone. See that guy, how tough he is? Look at him with a big red hat on. He's a tough guy. If Al Capone ever took you out to dinner and he didn't like your smile, he would kill you before morning, okay? And he got indicted less than me.
You know, more indictments than the worst criminals in American history. 91 indictments. All bogus. Even if a couple were bogus, when you reach the point of 91 indictments, this sort of multi-pronged assault on the Republican candidate for president and, of course, American democracy, well, then, of course, that's going to wake people up. You know, Democrats were hoping that Letitia James's win in New York City, that those kinds of headlines were going to start moving the needle, hopefully away from Donald Trump. He's guilty of fraud, they say. You can't vote for him. Look at the E. Jean Carroll case. He's guilty. You can't possibly vote for him, right? That's what they were hoping, but it's having the exact opposite effect. Donald Trump didn't commit fraud. He got a loan from the bank and paid it in full. Both parties, of course, benefited. It was a business transaction. No damage was done. Both were successful, but Letitia James is claiming that he's guilty of fraud and fining him an arbitrary $400+ million. No regular human being outside of the vote blue no matter who people is looking at that stuff and taking it seriously. They view it as a gross abuse of power. And of course, we're seeing it in the polling data. Joe Biden had a little momentary sort of climb there, but it's already been completely erased as Donald Trump continues to dominate. He is running away with it in the polls. And the left is coping. They don't get it. They don't understand. They think it's fake. Just like Bill Maher can't seem to understand why auto workers and blue-collar people would be ditching the Democrats. Here's a leftist clown on Twitter. He writes, regarding this new New York Times poll on Biden versus Trump, I do not believe that Biden is tied with women nationally at 46-46, and I do not believe, as this poll reports, that 23% of black voters nationwide will vote for Trump. Those are two things that are not going to happen. In other words, it can't be. I don't believe it. No. And look, it may not happen to that degree, but it is happening. There is so much enthusiasm behind Donald Trump, and that enthusiasm is getting greater by the day with every little indictment, with every fake news story, with every Joe Biden gaffe.
What must be what?
Donald Trump gains another supporter. And yes, you Democrats are in the process of losing some of your most important voter groups. Maybe not losing the whole group, but losing a certain segment of them. And that includes women. You know, we get it. The false conclusions on the whole IVF thing, the attempt to weaponize it, and of course what happened with Roe v. Wade. We get that you Democrats worked tirelessly to fearmonger the female vote, but at the end of the day, when it really comes down to it, the most important factor is, are you better off today than you were back then? And the simple answer for most people, and this applies to all people, all races, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, all genders, all 7,000 genders, most people agree that they are worse off today than they were back then. Donald Trump is promising to do something about it, while the Democrats focus on everything that doesn't matter, focus on character attacks and fear-mongering nonsense. They want to make the whole election about Donald Trump and, the existential threat that he poses, rather than speaking to voters directly and saying, this is what I'm going to do to make your life better. They're crying wolf again. They're using the same strategy that worked in 2018, that worked in 2020, although in 2020, let's just say there were very interesting circumstances during that election process. But anyways, they're expecting that this strategy is going to pay off once again. I don't think so. You got to be dynamic in this world. You can only cry the fascist wolf, the insurrectionist wolf, so many times until it starts to lose its effect. It's called diminishing returns. That's what we're seeing. And it seems as though the Democrats are only catching on to it now. Hopefully, too little too late. And hopefully this data is indicative of what's to come. Usually this data correlates to around a 1% margin of error. And so hopefully it tracks, hopefully it continues. My prediction, my personal view is I think Donald Trump's going to keep making gains, especially in the states that matter most. I think we're going to see him continue to rise in Michigan. I think we're going to see a Kerry Lake rise in Arizona, which I think the polling data is already indicating. I think it's too little, too late. The ship has sailed for a whole lot of people, whether that's young Gen Z males, male black voters, independent voters, even some indication that suburban female voters aren't supporting the Democrats at the rate that you might expect. I think it's happening. I think we're going to keep seeing it. Essentially, it's the Democrats' absolute worst nightmare. Evil Orange Man is ascending like a damn phoenix. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.